Welcome to the industry matchmaking session, Circular Economy. I want to point out this industry matchmaking session is open to small and medium-sized enterprises and industry. Our goal is to showcase promising clean technology innovations from Canadian and European companies and give buyers and sellers the opportunity to talk about clean technologies. As with all of the sessions in the workshop, I encourage you to go to Slido, which is hashtag CETA in caps, CETA, Cleantech, and send us your questions. The questions are important. We want to hear from you about the issues that are important to you. Our presenters each have 15 minutes to share how their organizations work with small and medium-sized enterprises. They'll cover how to engage with large companies. They'll also address research and development opportunities and priorities over the next 5 years. And of course, as with our other sessions, you can pose those questions as I asked you to go and use Slido, but you can also go and use the chat function on Zoom or on Whova, and our production team will gather up those questions and send them to me on Slido. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our presenters. I'll start with Michael Leopold, who is the CEO of Convertus Group, an organization that is ideally positioned to play an important role in the circular economy by ensuring resources are kept in use for as long as possible. We've got to get away from a disposable society. And sustainability and environmental awareness are at the core elements of Convertus Group's business, which continually seeks out opportunities to support not-for-profits, municipalities, educational institutions, and charities to work towards preserving developed resources and developing markets for waste products. Our other distinguished presenter is Robyn Collier, a senior VP and the Chief Sustainability Officer for Canadian Tire, which is one of Canada's major retailers. As such, Robyn's focus is not just on how Canadian Tire can develop processes and resource management to meet the company's environmental targets, but also ensure the products and suppliers the company engages with are also committed to the same sustainability standards and objectives. Robyn, I'll ask you to turn on your camera now and please take the screen.
Thank you very much, Stuart. That was terrific. So I'm going to, all going well, I'm going to pull up a short introduction to Canadian Tire for the European audience. And I'm fairly comfortable that people in Canada know Canadian Tire quite well. We are a coast-to-coast-to-coast retailer with a huge assortment. And one of our claims to fame is that we are within 10 minutes of most Canadians, and many of us grew up shopping with our parents at Canadian Tire. So the divisions of our company that I'll run through to kind of show you primarily the breadth of our assortment and the extent of our footprint are primarily Canadian Tire Retail, which is our flagship location, or flagship banner. The assortment covers a variety of merchandise, which is unparalleled in any other retailer in the world, I believe. There may be one or two small retailers that are as broad as us, but Canadian Tire is certainly not all just about tires. So we are a leader in automotive, but we also have very significant playing, fixing, seasonal, and living divisions under the Canadian Tire banner. Our Canadian Tire dealers tend to be pillars of their community, and customers have been shopping with us for almost 100 years. We'll be at our 100th anniversary in 2022. In 2011, we acquired Sport Chek, which is Canada's largest sporting goods retailers. So the assortment at Sport Chek is sporting goods more focused on team, I would say. So you won't find a lot of golf at Sport Chek, but you'll find a lot of hockey, you'll find basketball, fitness equipment, etc. We acquired Marks back in the early 2000s, and Marks is an apparel retailer. supplying workwear, but also casual apparel and footwear. And we would be one of the largest footwear retailers in Canada. A few years ago now, we acquired Helly Hansen, which is often a surprise to people that a Canadian company owns Helly Hansen, but we saw it as a way to start to expand a bit more internationally and grow our own brands division. We've also acquired Party City, which, as you can see, is very, very attractive to growing families, which is why we acquired it. We liked the idea of bringing active families further into our ecosystem. However, you can also see from this a bit of a sustainability challenge. And then finally, I'll just highlight for the purposes of this audience that our consumer brands division has become quite significant. So although we sell many, many national brands, we have a number of own brands that have taken a very, very significant market share through all of the categories that I described to you earlier. And this is also a very significant circular economy opportunity for us and for innovation over the longer term. And then just quickly, a kind of brief overview to show you our reach across the country. We do see ourselves as very iconic in Canada and very representative of Canadian values. So hopefully that screen share is no longer showing. So I wanted to just talk for a few minutes about circular economy and Canadian Tire. And we are really at the beginning of a journey, and both from a sustainability perspective as well as a circular economy perspective. And I really distinguish between the two because sustainability is something that companies in Canada are certainly grappling with. So retailers like ours, I would say, are at the, at the kind of low end of the maturity curve, but we are getting there. Those issues are becoming more and more important to Canadian consumers. I think that Canadian consumers are a little bit behind where Europeans are in this space, but I can tell you, I have seen, particularly among our millennial merchandisers and buyers, a real push to want to do innovation with respect to sustainability. I got an early look at our sustainable Christmas collection for this year, and it was really, really exciting for me, not just because it's something I'm passionate about, but also to see the will coming, I guess, from the merchandisers to make a difference. Those products tend to be, I would say, sustainable because they're not necessarily reflective of what I consider a full circular economy that we're fully embracing and involved in. An area of the business that where we are experimenting with innovation and has been very, very interesting for us in the circular economy space is to take some of our products and see if we can follow them through a recycling journey into new products that we do sell in our own stores. So the best example of that is tires. So with tires, our dealers, they take off more tires than they install, frankly, and more than they sell because we have such a huge auto service footprint across Canada. And so we are a major collector of tires. So we've entered into an arrangement with a recycling processor who will trace kind of where are our tires going. When they go to a vendor who could or is potentially a vendor to us, the vendor will come to us with a particular product that is made from our crumb rubber. And my little team, will go around to the merchandisers and frankly see if it's something we could include in the assortment. So very, very labor intensive form of innovation, but we're just starting to kind of get our arms around how can we start to utilize some of our recycled product into new merchandise. The other area of opportunity for us is on the operational waste side. And there we are doing a great job at sustainability, I would say. We are at a 90% diversion rate in our distribution centers, but we are not using any of that waste in new products of any significance at this point. And as you probably know, a lot of the challenges that we have in circular economy are that you need to really work your way through the whole value chain in order to get some of these initiatives to come to life. So one of the things that we did or were involved in the last year was to help to pull together a Canada Plastics Pact that we are participating in with respect to packaging or plastics in packaging. And over the longer term, certainly are looking to that model as potentially a way to learn how to engage the entire value chain in order to bring more circular economy innovation to life. The one thing I'll just close with in terms of giving the audience something to think about in terms of what our needs are, in addition to ideas for product and operational innovation in the circular economy space, is the need for traceability of materials. At the end of the day, we are closest to the customer. And when we make a claim to customers, given that the position we occupy with Canadians as a trusted brand, we need to make sure we can back up those claims with evidence. So obviously, we're not going to be able to say that something has XYZ recycled content unless we can prove that it does. So, you know, one of the, and we don't have a lot of resources to do this internally. We're an opportunity for vendors to pitch to us ways that we can easily and quickly go to market with their product. So the more kind of effort and energy that's put on traceability and being able to prove traceability by our suppliers, it's all very helpful in terms of moving things along a bit quicker and getting product to market. So I can pass back now.
Thank you, Robyn. Oh my gosh, your presentation has raised a whole bunch of questions with me, and I can hardly wait to get back to our panel session and ask you some of those questions. So thanks for turning off your camera. Michael, I'll ask you to turn your camera on now so that you can give us your opening remarks, and then we can dig into the, you know, the myriad elements of the circular economy. Michael, over to you.
Great, thanks, Stuart. I really appreciate that. So I put together a few slides, just like Robyn, just kind of introduce you to who Convertus Group is and how we came about. I'll have those pull up, I think, in the background. So while that's pulling together, I'll just a little highlight who Convertus is. So Convertus Group, by name, has only been around since October of 2019. However, Convertus was born out of the merger of WTT Technologies, which is Waste Treatment Technologies in the Netherlands, and they've been around since 2009. And it came out of the Orgaworld / Renewy operating business in the UK, and that was born back in the 1990s. So we've been around for a long time. We are specifically an organics player. We are the only organization that processes organics in North America that is able to do end-to-end. And when I say end-to-end, we can design, build, operate, maintain, and service organics processing facilities. So we have that all underneath one roof. Our design engineering is done in the Netherlands, and the vast majority of our operations is done in Canada. Next slide, please. So our operational footprint currently today in Canada, we process about, last year with COVID-19, we processed just under 300,000 tons of pure organic waste. 95% of our volume is from municipal customers. So this is what people would know as green bins. We do a little bit in the ICI, commercial, institutional, and industrial sector, but that's probably less than 5% of our business. You'll see that we do high volume. So our flagship facility is our Surrey, British Columbia facility, where we do just over 100,000 tons last year. Ottawa was just under 100,000 tons last year, and London was just under 100,000 tons as well. We also have a fourth facility in Nanaimo, British Columbia, that we've just kicked off a very large revamp. So currently today, Nanaimo is doing just under 20,000 tons, and with the revamp, we'll have the capacity to do nearly 50,000 tons and solve a lot of the organic recycling issues for Vancouver Island. Next slide, please. So our process, we have three very distinct processes, and this is what really separates us from our competition. Most of our competition only will have one form of technology in which they process organic waste. Having that engineering facility in the Netherlands, it really allows us to expand our breadth and depth of technology. And so we deal with what we would say very highly contaminated and highly complex organics waste. So we don't typically deal with the very rudimentary things like leaf and yard collection that can be done in an outdoor windrowing. We also stay out of the agricultural sector, so we don't take manures. We focus mainly on that green bin, which is what we call SSO, source segregated organics. So the main technology we use both in London, Ottawa, and Surrey is called tunnel composting. So we are keeping the waste aerobic, that means with oxygen, so we're hitting it up with air. So basically what we're doing is we're obtaining about a 40 to 50% evaporation. Again, it deals with very complex and contaminated organic waste streams. Unfortunately, humans, we as people, as humans, don't always follow the rules. The analogy I always give is that the pickle jar. And so again, if you reach into your fridge and you see that your pickles now have fur on them, the right thing to do would be to take the metal lid off, pour the liquid down the drain, put the furry pickles in the green bin, and put the glass jar and the metal lid in the blue bin for recycling. That's typically the way it should be done. However, we do have people who say, oh, my pickles have fur on them, I'm just going to throw them in the green bin. And so again, we deal with the glass, the plastic, and the juice as well. So tunnel composting really allows us to deal with that complex waste stream. And the other thing with tunnel composting, it allows curbside delivery of fresh waste. So this is really important, and it helps with the carbon footprint of communities. So the best way to bring organics is to have a facility located in your community. It's picked up fresh at curbside in front of your house every morning, or not every morning, but once a week, and it's delivered directly to our facilities, tipped on our tipping floor. And by the afternoon, we've shredded it and put it in a tunnel. That's the best way to do it. However, not every municipality has a organics processing facility in its backyard. So a lot of times it has to be taken to a transfer station, or it's dumped, it's bulked up, loaded on a large transport and trucked, maybe hundreds of kilometers away. So again, that's not helping with the overall carbon footprint. The other two technologies we have, and those are mainly in our BC plants, is dry AD and wet AD. So anaerobic digestion is without oxygen. And in this particular case here, what we're doing is we're trying to pull off biomethane gas. So our Surrey biofuels facility, we do exactly that. We pull off about 80,000 gigajoules of biomethane gas per year. And this is just from the waste going into a tunnel where all the oxygen is removed. We allow the anaerobic microbes to take over. They'll break down the waste. They'll generate CH4 and CO2. We then strip the CO2 out. We upgrade the CH4, put it into a high pressure gas line, and it's injected back onto the grid. So we work with the local utility companies. One of the things we like to hang our hats on, especially our main customer, City of Surrey out in British Columbia, is we helped the City of Surrey become the first carbon negative municipality in Canada. And that is because of the 80,000 gigajoules of renewable natural gas that we're generating. It actually goes back onto the grid. They get credits for it, and it helps to fuel their fleet of waste collection as well as their fleet of vehicles for the City of Surrey. So the main benefits that we offer with this advanced technology is we're able to operate closer to customers. So again, minimizing that carbon footprint. We reduce our processing times through increasing the throughput. We reduce our odor footprint, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and the ability to deal with that complex and contaminated organic waste. Next slide, please. So odor abatement is very important to us. And the reason odor abatement is so important is we like to be located in urbanized areas. And so again, we are really trying to cut down on that carbon footprint to allow curbside delivery. So we have a 3-stage odor abatement system that we have. So once all air in our facility, whether it's process air or ambient air in the receiving halls, it all goes through this process. So we start with an ammonia scrubber. When you're dealing with organics, the biggest contaminant you get is ammonia. So in this case here, we use sulfuric acid that's been diluted. It goes through that large white box you'll see up there that's got a medium inside it. As it's cascading down, it's encapsulating the ammonia in the air as it goes through. One of the nice byproducts of it is it produces a CIFA, which is a Canadian Food and Administration registered fertilizer called ammonia sulfate. So we sell that back to farmers. The second one is our bioscrubber or humidification. So what this does is it really improves the water absorption of the air pollutants by adding humidity back into the air. Unfortunately, the ammonia scrubber is pulling the humidity out to get the ammonia out. So in the next stage, we want to add the humidity back in. And then the final stage is a biofilter. So this improves that absorption of any odorous gases that are left, H2S, and everything in the that goes through the facility ends up going through those biofilters. Biofilters are like living organisms, so we change them out on probably an annual basis and monitor their progress. Next slide, please. So the Convertis Group's strategic goals, and I want to touch on this. The last two, again, we are an organization. We're looking to generate profit. We have costs associated with it. But you'll see that those are number 3 and number 4 and are really the long-term strategic goal. Number 1 and number 2 are the ones that are really driving our purpose and how we're delivering on our purpose. And so we want to be the leading, most advanced organic waste operator in Canada, and that's by bringing in those multiple technologies. But number 2 is the one I think that's critical for today's conversation. Is we want to act as that key component in the circular economy, and we want to maximize the reuse of nutrients in the food chain, and we want to utilize the renewable energy potential with the renewable natural gas. So I'm going to walk you through some of our visions. We've just rolled out our ESG, and you're going to see on the next slide that we have a vision for 2035, as we call this our dot on our horizon. And so I think this is a very, we don't think it's aggressive, but in general, for a waste company to come out and say, hey, we have this aggressive vision when we look at resources, energy, water, and environment, and some of these things that we want to get to by 2035 are pretty aggressive. So when we look at resources, we want to become 100% closed loop. So that means zero waste that comes in our front door ends up in landfill. Still today, just like the pickle jar story I told you, we still do end up with some components that end up in landfill. It's typically less than 10%. In some cases, it's less than 5% in our facilities, but there is still some of that waste going to landfill. So our goal is to figure out ways that those offtakes can be handled and either recycled or upgraded to keep them in a landfill. The second one is we want to be a net energy producer. We want to, again, be 100% closed loop. We want to be almost off the grid. So we're producing renewable natural gas. We have that capabilities of it. That can either run a turbine that generates electricity or can be put back onto the natural gas grid. So we want to know that we're producing more energy than we're using. When we look at water, we want to be water neutral. So right now we do get some leachate that we have to dispose of, and we do use fresh water. Leachate, for those of you that don't know what that is, take a green or red pepper, leave it in your fridge for about a month and a half, and when you lift it up, that goo underneath of it, that's leachate. So that's the moisture coming out of the organics. And then finally, in the environment, again, we want to make sure that we have clean water, clean environment, and no substantial negative impacts to the environment in which we operate. So these are our long-term sustainable goals, and this is what we look for from our suppliers and potential suppliers to help us achieve these type of goals. Next slide, please. We can turn off the slides, and I'll just kind of summarize that last little bit before I turn it back over to Stuart. And in today's seminar, this is what we're talking about: is how can small, medium, upstart companies with some clean tech technology work with a medium-sized firm like ourselves. And this is really what we're looking to do, is to minimize our environmental impact by partnering with up-and-coming clean tech technology that can help us attain to our 2035 goals, if not even sooner than 2035. So we look forward to fielding some questions and hopefully making some contacts today as well.
Thank you, Michael. And Robyn, I invite you to turn your camera back on. And also I go back to you, the attendees, to send us questions to Slido that I can present. But I have to admit that when I start to think about the enormity of the circular economy, it is so complex. You know, Robyn, you touched on the fact that you've got a plastics program in place. Well, how do you then start to go back all the way through the supply chain to the plastics manufacturers so that they are developing plastics that you know can go into a cycle where they actually can be reused, because the mixing of post-consumer plastics can be quite challenging. And so how are you working sort of down the whole production chain to help make that happen? And you know, Michael, I know that you're more on the organic side, but are you doing the same kinds of work with different organizations to get similar kinds of outcomes? Robyn, I'll start with you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'll tell you, we could never ever do it on our own, and frankly, it doesn't appear that any of our industry partners have been able to do it on their own either. And that was the reason why we came together to create the Canada Plastics Pact, because we did need to get everybody in the value chain talking to each other. So we had a number of discussions amongst the, I'll call it the producer community, retailers and consumer goods manufacturers, about how to achieve this. And as we talked about it, we were fortunate enough to be working, some of us, with a not-for-profit with an expertise in this kind of space. We decided that the best way to attack this was to use an established framework, which is why we ended up with the Ellen MacArthur framework. One of the things we've been able to do in Canada, and we are just off, barely started, I would say. We launched in January. Is we've been able to bring plastic producers to the table in a significant way, and they are very engaged. We have a particular interest, I would say, in plastics in Canada, in that we are obviously a huge producer of fossil fuels. We, feed, there's a part of the country that feeds the plastic industry, and they will need to, we together, frankly, as Canadians, need to understand how to transition to a less carbon intensive world and do our part. So I don't have actual answers to your question, Stuart. All I have is process and players. But, for anybody who's ever tried to drive results through a business, you start with accountabilities, you start with objectives, and then you bring people together and you try to enable to success. Yeah.
Well, I asked that question in particular because it was in Globe 2020 last year, just before we had the everything locked down, and there were presentations by plastics producers where they are now starting to put tracers into the plastic so that when it goes into a recycling facility, it passes through a scanner and they're able to separate out that plastic so that you're not getting a blend of different types of plastics, which are really difficult to work with if you're wanting to repurpose them. And so I can see that this would be the kind of innovation that becomes important to you, especially considering you have such a significant relationship with end users, and so much of that packaging, of course, is in plastic.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a different plastics footprint, I'll say, than grocery, right? So it is a unique challenge depending on what you sell. The benefit is, I think, as we work more closely with recycling companies and plastics producers, we're going to start to know firsthand what the solutions are and how to get there. Frankly, to do this kind of transition cost effectively, we need everybody moving in the same direction. We can't afford to invest in 3,000 innovations, so we need to pick the winning ones, and then everybody kind of support those innovations.
Right. Michael, when I was listening to your presentation, you were talking about organic waste, and I started to try to envision what that encompasses. And then as somebody who might be a small to medium-sized company wanting to work with you, what are the opportunities that exist that will help you to deliver on your promise of being able to process these waste products locally?
Yeah, great question, Stuart. I think what we're really looking for is to partner with people who can help us turn our offtakes into beneficial reuse products, right? So again, we make compost, we make NASM, non-agricultural source material. We now make biogas as well, but we still have a number of products that aren't beneficial reuse that either end up in a landfill or we have to pay somebody to take away and it gets further processed. So we're looking for those partners where we look at what now currently could be a waste stream and turning it into something that it's not about profitability, it's about making sure it's not a waste. I'll give you a perfect example is this ammonia sulfate I talked about from our ammonia scrubbers, and it's a byproduct of our odor abatement system. And so originally we would treat that as leachate. So we would pay, 8 cents a liter to get rid of this material. And we found out that it really had this beneficial quality, especially for wheat farmers. They absolutely love this stuff early in the spring, helps green the wheat up. And I mean, they were paying big dollars to buy this that was manufactured by a chemical company. And so once we got it tested and certified by the Canadian Food and Drug Administration, we found that, hey, we actually could make a little bit of profit off of, which was great, but we were more excited that it was being beneficially reused and applied, land applied, helping to put nutrients back into the soil that are being drained year after year from the different crop streams. So that's just one example of a success, and we're looking for those same type of things. Again, we have some plastics, we have some glass, we have some metal, we have digestates, so we're always looking for beneficial homes for that.
So from a business perspective or a business opportunities perspective, from a small to medium-sized company, let's say that is based in Surrey or just outside of Surrey, what opportunities might they be considering at the moment to work or partner with you?
We get a lot of compostable products, of course, is one of the biggest things. That's really that hot button right now. And Robyn and I had a little session a couple of days ago, and we had this discussion, especially Canadian Tire. They're getting pitched all the time. Oh, my product's 100% compostable. Okay, well, who says it's compostable? And is there some lab data to it? And so one of the things we always say to people is, we don't want to be your test ground. So again, work with labs. I mean, sometimes these startups, there's some financial considerations where they're going, well, it's pretty expensive for us to do all the analysis and testing. Work with local universities. We do all the time. I mean, we have a great relationship with UBC. We have a great relationship with Western Ontario in Canada, and as well as Queens and Kingston. And so we're always trying to, test out different products. And so that's one of the advices I always give to a customer is, I have lots of people come through the door that say, I can solve your problem. And I always say, well, if I had a nickel for everybody who told me that they could solve my problem, I'd be retired right now. So we always say, well, what's the data and where have you tried it and what spectrum have you tried it? And again, they're like, well, but we really want you to test it out. And I said, well, we're a pretty high volume operation. And I can give you an example, something that they give us may fit in the palm of your hand. And our composting tunnels hold 600 tons of organic waste. So they said, well, can you put it in there and tell us if it composts? And I said, do you think you're going to be able to find a handful of material in 600 tons? Oh yeah, I never thought about that. We're like, okay, again, this is a perfect opportunity to get our youth involved and get the universities involved and use some of the engineerings in these different programs. We do it all the time. We absolutely love the university community. And a lot of times those become our next level of employees. And I'm hoping that 5 years from now, they're my next managers.
Michael, you touched on something right there about the responsibility that you have as an organization, and you referred to Robyn. And Robyn, I know that you have that dual role where you have to be responsible that when you make a claim that this is sustainable or recyclable, that you can actually back up that claim with the kind of information and data that you require. Why is this becoming so important that we're able to speak with true authority about the sustainability and the contribution or role in the circular economy?
Yeah, I think that we'll all remember a number of years ago, might be 15, 20 years ago now, when green products started to come to market, and there was some excitement at the beginning, but then there were claims of greenwashing, and it kind of tainted in a way the whole category. And the other piece of that, of course, which isn't as linked to traceability, but is quality. So people perceived that you were taking a hit on quality, potentially paying a higher price, and then you didn't even know if the claims were true. So we've been recovering from that, I think, as a country in terms of our consumer base since then. In the past, I would say 5 to 6 years, that appetite for for green product really has come back. And frankly, it's due to the leadership of some of the consumer goods companies that have taken some risk and put a real stake in the ground that they're going to do this and they're going to do that well. And so what they've done, to their credit, is they built an expectation. First of all, they built the trust, and then they built an expectation amongst consumers that when they look for information to prove the claim, that it will be there. So not having it be there is not even an option. It certainly wouldn't be an option from a trust perspective anyways, but I think even in terms of making sales, it's not an option. And I just Michael, you made me think of an interesting challenge we had that we took on in my group, which was, it was actually not related to circularity, but we worked with universities in the way that you've described. We started selling paint in a bag. And the initial response from people internally who were concerned about consumer reaction was in part, but that's more plastic we're putting into the environment. But the flip sometimes is that maybe you're saving GHGs because a plastic container takes up less space to shift. So it's that whole concept of a life cycle analysis. And so my team, being, again, passionate people who don't mind doing stuff off the side of their desk, we worked with a university in Quebec and did that full life cycle analysis and proved that the plastic bag container of paint was actually more sustainable than what we had on the shelf. And interestingly, consumers have kind of become drawn to this particular product. So, I think we're past the point of wanting to rely on our instincts about what will sell and about what is better for the environment. And we really are at a place where we have to base our decisions on science and then be transparent about what the science is.
Yeah. Well, Robyn, I agree with you. I think that complete life cycle analysis or assessment is vitally important, and it allows us to make truly informed decisions. And plastic is one of those very, very interesting products because, as you point out, the greenhouse gas component of transporting, paint in cans is going to be significantly higher than transporting it in plastic bags. The plastic bag will actually be easier to dispose of or take out of the stream than the metal container. It's a very, very interesting challenge. Are you finding some of those same challenges or opportunities, Michael?
Yeah, and I'll give you one perfect example, and because you touched on plastic, it's such a lightning bolt for controversy around plastic bags. And so we worked closely with the City of Ottawa 2 years ago. And so what City of Ottawa found was that their organics program didn't have the uptake that they wanted from the residents. And I think it was in the low 50% participation rate. And so they did a lot of hard work, and they went out, canvassed people, and found out why weren't people participating. And so they called it the yuck factor. So again, organics were sticking to the side of the bin in the winter, freezing to it, or in the summer, it got pretty smelly in there. So that was that ick factor. And so we worked through a lot of things, and they talked about allowing people to use either biodegradable bags or plastic bags to put their organic waste in. So they would put it in the green bin to have it be processed by us. And so we had the technology, which was really unique with our shredding and our screening, both at the front end and the back end, to be able to pull these plastic bags out. And so we rolled out a new program. I mean, kudos to the City of Ottawa. They're the ones who did the communication program. They did it quite well. And I'm going to say that since that program's been rolled out, which has been almost 18 months now, I'm pretty confident to say they've had at least a 15 to 20% uptake in volume that we're seeing from the City of Ottawa. And so again, you have to look at it as the devil's in the detail, but that plastic bag was the thing that really helped accelerate their program. And so you say, well, that's a bad thing, but it's not. It's a great thing. That means that's 20% less organics going to landfill that are creating biomethane that are contributing to greenhouse gases. So I think, hats off to them for what they accomplished.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you make that connection. You're saying that bio mass or organic product that would have wound up in the landfill and is going to decompose anyways and produce the methane gas, is not being captured. It's not being converted back into CH4, as you pointed out earlier, and can be put into a stream. It's so much more efficient and beneficial to the environment to be able to make sure that we move those products through the appropriate stream, and we really do get a circular economy. You know, I was also, Robyn, I was thinking about when you were talking about your tire program, there must be so many opportunities there with the used tires and what you can do with those products as you move beyond the first consumer use.
Yeah. Again, you know, we can use all the help we can get in terms of ideas. But I will say, I actually printed we just got a 1-year certificate of achievement from our recycling company that says that we collected over almost 14 million kilograms of tires, which is the weight equivalent of 114 Boeing 787 Dreamliner airplanes, which is, you know, beyond my knowledge of what an airplane is, but with a very significant CO2 offset. And where we use the crumb rubber, we were able to direct some of it actually to our Jumpstart playgrounds. So the surfaces of we've built playgrounds in each province and the territories that are fully accessible, and the surface of the playground is rubber so that wheelchairs can go on. So what we did was we said we'd like to use our crumb rubber in those playground surfaces. So that's been actually kind of a nice way to show the organization. May not get a lot of public, you know, consumer interest, but we were able to show employees in the organization, look what you can do, right? Like, look what we can do with this product. And from there, we went to some of our vendors have brought to us. So in a pandemic, when you're not allowed to go to the gym and you buy your treadmill to be in your condo, you can buy a very nice thick rubber mat to put your fitness equipment on, and that is made of our crumb rubber. So, you know, just different sorts of things like that. Now, you know, where the innovation has to come over time is that's pretty much a pure rubber product. So we have to start looking at how do you mix these materials? How do you create things that are, you know, stronger, different than the original input?
Right. So there are so many different ways that we can go. I want to come back to you and talk about clothing in a moment, because, you know, I know that Mark's Work Warehouse and Helly Hansen and whatnot are all part of your stream. But Michael, there's a question that came in for you, and it says, have you considered the use of pyrolysis? I hope that that's the correct pronunciation.
Yep.
Pyrolysis. Okay.
Yep. Pyrolysis.
To produce biochar as a carbon sink and produce energy as a side product.
Absolutely. We've actually been in discussion with 2 biochar companies about doing that very thing to make, again, a beneficial reuse product. And so we've looked at it. Again, sometimes pyrolysis, which is the burning of waste, is sometimes looked upon, again, the optics of it, because back 20 years ago, that was viewed to be a bad thing. But there's been so many technological advances that's really brought it to the forefront. And that's one of the ways in biochar is a very good beneficial reuse product. And so, yes, we've looked at it, and we're actually talking about building another facility, hopefully here in the next 18 months, close to the GTA area. And we would probably include that pyrolysis in there and produce a biochar as well. So fantastic question.
You know, a couple of years ago, I was in Victoria, and I was at a waste product energy production local facility where they took wood waste and they burnt it in highly concentrated high heat burners with very, very little emissions, but they would then create steam, which would power a generator and run electricity in a local community. These are other opportunities that we can use organic waste that otherwise might have just wound up in the landfill because they've been well, they have no further use beyond the original use because the way that they were taken apart gave them no life afterwards. Is this also something that you're looking into? And are these opportunities the kinds of opportunities that we have to continue to explore?
100%. I'll give you an example on the plastics front. So one of the things with plastics, from a burning perspective, it has very high BTUs in it. So what we've looked at is it being an alternative fuel for cement kilns. So again, cement kilns are operating at that 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and so again, everything gets completely incinerated. So right now they use a lot of fossil fuels in order to maintain that level of high heat, and so they're always looking for ways to look at alternative fuel sources. And so what we're trying to do is to see whether we take the film plastic and hard plastic that we collect at our facilities that would typically go into landfill, and we're trying to determine whether we turn that into some type of lighter fluff that they can feed into the kiln, or do we compact into something the size of a football and feed it in mid kiln to give that flux of energy for them as well.
Robyn, I'm going to come back to this question about clothing because I'm fascinated by the clothing industry's move towards ensuring that they are as environmentally sustainable as possible. You know, we've heard stories around the world about, you know, water wastage and dyes and a wide variety of things. But is the clothing sector really moving into this circular economy in a way that is going to make a difference? And then how does that play into like the decisions that you make in selecting your products and how you will deal with them if post-consumer? Because I know that some clothing companies are saying, okay, once you've finished with that, bring it back to us and we'll repurpose it for maybe for a secondary market. Are these opportunities that you're looking at as well?
Yeah, so certainly on what I would call, again, like the sustainability front, the Marks guys are very, very energized around making a significant difference. And we are if not the largest, then close to the largest seller of jeans in Canada. And we all know the challenges with denim and water usage. So we've been investing in innovation in relation to our plants overseas and processes overseas for about, gosh, that one would be probably 4 or 5 years, and then driving and assisting the production of sustainable cotton for over 10 years. So we've kind of had our eye on that ball for a while, and I'm hoping that we're certainly planning to bring some of that to life in our product in the near future. The reuse of apparel I find incredibly challenging personally.
Yeah.
I think that if we're starting to see the very high-end brands going there, and that is incredibly welcome. So the Patagonia obviously has been there for a while. I've got a Burberry coat over there in the corner, which hopefully will last me 10 or 20 years, but they've looked at being able to sell your Burberry coat back. And there are lots and lots of initiatives around to take garments back to the thread and to repurpose the threads. They are so expensive. So that's the challenge. It's how do you take garments and give them a second life without it being incredibly expensive. So I think that's a 10 to 15 year challenge for everybody.
Well, Michael, it might be a challenge that you're willing to take on because you're saying we're going to take existing resources, we'll repurpose them in a way that there can be another use. What are some of the opportunities that potentially are in trying to get the most possible life out of clothing? And am I asking you to stretch here and go beyond what is your mandate?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, at the end of the day, thankfully, I haven't really seen any clothing in the green bins, and I hope I never do. So that might be a little bit more of an advance for us, again, because we're dealing with that organic side of the business. And again, what we're trying to do is our soils get depleted from our crop growing, right? And so again, we have in food, there's an immense amount of nutrients that's left in food. And so what we want to be able to do is put that nutrient back into the soil. And it's something that's much needed, and especially for our European colleagues who are on this call, they'll know that they've been doing this in the Netherlands, in the Benelux area. They've been doing this for multiple decades, and we don't do as good a job of that in North America yet. And that's something where I think we can really help in that agricultural community to push that forward. And again, I hope we don't see any closing there. So I'm sorry I couldn't answer your question about textiles.
Well, that's okay. You sort of launched me into the next question, which is, you talk about being able to capture, all of those elements of organic food waste and then put them back into the environment to be nutrients for future growth and so on. But you're also playing a role in carbon capture when you do that. You are sequestering that carbon, and during the process of conversion, as you say, you're capturing the biogas and being able to use it as another energy source, which has a lower carbon footprint than if you were to use a fossil fuel.
Yeah, in our Surrey facility, and again, we work very closely with the city of Surrey. We have a 25-year operating contract with them, and it was their vision to build this facility. We helped design and engineer it and construct it, but it was their vision and what they wanted to do, and they really wanted to do that closed loop system. And so we've had a number of tours and education through there, but one of the things that Surrey really envisioned is they said, okay, listen, we're generating this organics. How do we put it into this closed loop environment where we can pull all the energy out of it? So in this case, biomethane. And so what they said is that renewable natural gas biomethane, how about we put in our entire fleet of vehicles, not just waste collection trucks, but they're municipal vehicles, so cars, trucks, the whole yards, everything's run off of renewable natural gas. And so we're taking that, putting it back on the grid. They're getting carbon credits for it because we're not using original sources of it. And then also to complete the loop was we're taking the compost that we're doing and we're putting it back into the community. They're using it in large scale agricultural projects or industrial commercial landscaping. And so ultimately what the goal is that nutrients are being applied back to the field that are producing the food that the people in the city of Surrey will eat. So then again, the whole cycle starts all over again.
Wow. Robyn, I have a question for you because I think about the, Canadian Tires, we know has such a tremendous history in the country, been a part of our life for so long. But as you develop new stores, what role does an eye on the circular economy play in the way in which you are designing, developing, constructing, and maybe then even deconstructing in the future the buildings that will be your stores that people want to go in and buy, so many different products from?
Yeah, Stuart, you're asking tough questions.
I want to know. So, these are important things.
Yeah, well, on the premise that honesty is the best policy, we're not there yet. So we're heavily focused on GHG reduction and energy reduction. So one of the benefits, as you know, of doing sustainability is it often has an economic benefit. And so that's where the world has really gotten, and we've certainly really gotten traction on. We'll invest in an innovation that saves us energy that has a longer return than another capital investment in order to get that energy savings and do the right thing for the planet. And so we're not there yet with circular economy. There are some things that we can purchase that are circular economy products that would be an equivalent price, but they're not very flashy. So you really have to be, Michael and I were talking about ESG. And I do think for sustainability professionals and for companies that want to be able to tell a really strong sustainability story, where you get the little bit of splash is setting some goals around what you want to achieve in order to move that penny forward a little bit. So if you can tell the world, we intend to, have recycled plastic fixtures in 50% of our fixtures across the country, and you're telling investors that becomes a rallying cry for the organization. but to do things in not a very strategic one-off way, it's very difficult in a big company to get traction. So thank you for making sure that's on my list. I very much appreciate it.
but does that not just immediately highlight the breadth of opportunities that are
Absolutely.
available to people who say, well, okay, hang on a second, I have been thinking about this, I want to come and talk to you about it, and I can come with an innovative solution that can be address an issue here, and then somebody else can do the same. It's the fact that there's a willingness to say, let's explore it. And is that not the way in which the circular economy is going to help us reach our long-term objectives, which is to reduce our carbon footprint and play a beneficial role in climate?
No, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there. I don't think that we can afford, any of us really can afford, not to be having these conversations and not to have them in a more accelerated way, because it's a complex problem. We can't, as using the Canada Plastics Plastic Pact as an example, it took us a long time to figure out that we needed that cross-value chain collaboration and innovation brought directly to the table and us all working together in order to achieve a goal. And we have to do that in so many areas.
And the same would be true for you, wouldn't it, Michael? Like the range of opportunities is going to continue to expand, and it's important to explore these so long as they're within the scope of your business.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we obviously never know what's going to walk in that front door, and it's very intriguing to see what happens there. But the one thing that I do caution on, and I do like to, again, because we are talking to some potential small technology providers out there that want to bring this to us. And so sometimes, we're a little bit hesitant if the data is not there or the research hasn't been done, because again, we operate a biological process. And so if that biological process goes out of variance, it's hard to get it back. And it could actually, they say, well, it's just a trial. How hard could it be? And so again, if the trial goes sideways and upsets our chemistry and our biology, you could be talking about generating 600 tons of waste that has to go to landfill. So again, we're a little hesitant about that. And I've always tell people, make sure you do your homework before you come here, and make sure you've got your data, and let me know what you've done in the lab, and let me know who you've worked with. Because again, there is no such thing as a magic potion that we can just spread on and everything gets fixed. But there is some great innovative ideas out there, and we always have our door open to someone who comes prepared and has got some new technology.
So one of the other challenges for small and medium-sized companies, and I put this question to both of you, is they come along and they've done that work and they say, we have a solution that will produce results. And you go through the due diligence and you say, yes, this is going to work. But then they face the challenge of scalability. They don't have the resources to scale up. What's your willingness to work with them to help them get to that point so that they can bring forward what this innovation is, and that you can both benefit from it? And I asked that question to both of you.
Yeah, sure, I don't mind jumping in. So I mean, scalability is extremely important, because we have seen things where people say, hey, look at, I'll use one, for example, was around UV light and treating air with UV light. And they'd done it in a laboratory, and we thought, oh, this is absolutely fantastic. And so then once I showed them the volume of air that we moved through the facility, so we're moving 100,000 cubic meters of air every hour through there. And so then, the guy sat down and we did the calculations, and we would need a UV bed that was 3 football fields long. And so again, we said, the practicality of that just won't work. It was great idea, but the technology is just not there yet. So that's an example of, well, there was nothing more to do because you couldn't take it any further. But there is ideas where if the scalability, they need some help from a financing perspective. I mean, the government of Canada has lots of programs. The provincial governments have lots of programs, and we're willing to work with them to help them pair up, because obviously if there's a solution there for us that's going to help us, it's helping an upstart business. Of course, it's a win-win for everybody at that point in time.
Right. Robyn?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to add. I think for Canadian Tire, we're more willing to help scale in an area that is really core to our business. right? So, I mean, we
Right.
have, we have so much to be working on. So we, if we see, for example, a product that would have the ability to scale to a national level and, that, and it's innovative, then, that's core to our kind of mission and purpose. Your example of buildings, we do have a buildings footprint that is significant. We pride ourselves on our bricks and mortar presence. So although we are, heavily into e-commerce at this point, we believe people want to shop close to home. So that's another place strategically where innovation could be scaled across our network. And we've done that with some GHG innovations. Frankly, we don't like being a leader in innovation. We like to be third or fourth because we have some complexity in our system. We have independent dealers, for example, and that we need to work with. So we can't, any failure in an innovation on our side results in a lot of appropriate noise back to us. So, we have our own kind of challenges to work through. I mean, another area obviously is in any innovation related to distribution centers. And we've been working on some of that again with respect to power, but circularity, absolutely. If we can adopt some innovations with respect to our operational waste, then, frankly, I think one of the places that Canadian Tire can play a key role in Canada is that when we do adopt something, we can give it the kind of visibility among our suppliers and frankly our competitors, and we're not shy about doing that.
Right. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation and discussion. We've got just a couple minutes left, and I'm just going to ask you for one or two last thoughts from each of you before we wrap up this session, and then we'll move over to the next room for the closing ceremonies. Robyn, do you have any last thoughts here for us?
No, nothing particularly brilliant, I don't think. A little bit more kind of want to stretch out my hand because I really do believe in the collaborative approach, and I don't think anyone has the answers to the problems we face. So I think we all have to be curious and disciplined and see what kind of change we can make working together.
Which is right on theme with what we wanted to do with this panel, is to be able to talk about how we can work together. Michael, last thoughts from you?
Yeah, and I echo Robyn's thoughts exactly. It is about being collaborative and coming up with new concepts. I will always put my little pitch in there that I just think that the Canadian universities and colleges are absolutely fantastic, and don't be afraid to reach out to that resource to really help you kind of get that data-driven results and help put together a business case before you reach out to businesses like ours and like Robyn's.
Well, I really appreciate the efforts of both of your organizations to be the contributions that you're making towards investing in circular economies, and also anything else that we can do to ensure that we are reducing our footprint and remaining sustainable. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thanks very much, Stuart. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Robyn. It's great.
My pleasure. And to the viewers, we will wrap up this session now, and you can join us in a few minutes at 45 minutes past the hour for our closing remarks. See you soon.